You are cleaning out your garage, workshop, or storage shed when you spot something that almost every household has lying around somewhere: an old, broken fan. The motor no longer works, the blades are damaged, the wiring is beyond repair. Without thinking twice, most people would toss it straight into the trash. After all, what possible use could there be for a rusty old fan cage? But what if I told you that one of the strangest DIY pest control experiments I have ever tried started with that exact piece of junk? And what happened next completely changed the way I look at old household items. Because a few weeks ago, I tested a bizarre rat repellent trick using nothing more than an old fan cage in a simple homemade setup. To be completely honest, I expected it to fail. In fact, I almost didn't bother trying it at all. But the results surprised me enough that I knew I had to share the experiment. Welcome back to Forbidden and Ember, where we explore creative DIY projects, unusual life hacks, homemade inventions, and clever ways to turn everyday junk into something surprisingly useful. Today, I'm going to show you a strange rat repellent trick that uses an old fan cage, explain exactly how I built it, reveal what happened during the test, and show why this forgotten piece of scrap metal might deserve a second chance before you throw it away. And trust me, the most surprising part of this entire project is not the fan cage itself, it's what goes inside it. Now, if you've ever dealt with rats, then you already know how frustrating they can be. They seem to appear out of nowhere. One day, your garage looks perfectly clean, and the next day you find droppings behind a box, chewed packaging, damaged wiring, or strange scratching noises coming from places you can't reach. Rats are incredibly adaptable. They can squeeze through openings far smaller than most people imagine, and once they discover a reliable source of food, water, or shelter, convincing them to leave becomes extremely difficult. The reason rats are so successful is that they only need a few basic things to survive. They need food, they need water, and they need a safe place to hide. Unfortunately, garages, workshops, sheds, barns, and storage rooms often provide all three. A few scattered seeds, pet food, bird feed, or even crumbs can become a food source. A leaking pipe or water container provides moisture, and stacks of boxes, tools, lumber, or stored equipment create perfect hiding places. To a rat, these locations are not just shelters, they are ideal real estate. Like many people, I had tried various solutions over the years. Traps sometimes worked, but they required constant attention. Commercial repellents could be expensive and often needed frequent replacement. Poison was never something I wanted to use because of concerns about pets, wildlife, and unintended consequences. So when someone mentioned this strange homemade rat deterrent involving strong scents and recycled materials, I was skeptical. It sounded like one of those internet tricks that people share without ever testing. But curiosity got the better of me. While cleaning the workshop, I noticed an old pedestal fan that had been sitting unused for years. The motor was dead, the electrical cord was damaged, and the plastic housing was cracked beyond repair. The only part that still looked useful was the metal cage surrounding the blades. Normally, I would have tossed it into the scrap pile without a second thought, but this time I stopped and looked at it differently. Instead of seeing a broken fan, I saw a lightweight metal container with excellent airflow, a sturdy frame, and a design that could easily be hung almost anywhere. That simple observation sparked an idea. What if the fan cage could be repurposed into a scent diffusion device? Rats rely heavily on their sense of smell, much more heavily than humans do. They use scent to locate food, identify danger, communicate with other rats, and navigate their surroundings. Certain strong odors are known to make environments less attractive to rodents. The goal would not be to harm them or eliminate them instantly. The goal would be to make the area less comfortable and encourage them to look elsewhere. So I decided to put the theory to the test. The first step was cleaning the fan cage thoroughly. Years of dust, grease, and dirt had accumulated between the metal wires. After a thorough washing and drying, I was left with a surprisingly useful structure. The cage was open enough to allow excellent airflow while still being strong enough to hold materials securely inside. It was lightweight, easy to hang, and designed to protect whatever was placed in the center. Next came the important part. Inside the cage, I placed several pieces of absorbent material that could hold scent effectively. You can use cotton pads, strips of cloth, natural fibers, or other materials capable of absorbing and slowly releasing odors over time. Once those materials were secured inside the cage, I added a strong natural scent source. Many people use peppermint-based solutions because rodents tend to dislike highly concentrated mint odors. Others experiment with clove oil, eucalyptus oil, or similarly strong scents. The exact scent may vary depending on personal preference, but the principle remains the same. The goal is to create an environment that rats find unpleasant. Once everything was assembled, I hung the completed setup in a section of the workshop where I had previously noticed signs of rodent activity. This area was close to a back wall, near stored materials, and positioned along what appeared to be a common travel route. Looking at the finished project, I still wasn't convinced. To be honest, it looked more like an odd piece of workshop art than an actual pest control device. If someone had walked in at that moment, they probably would have laughed and assumed I was wasting my time. Then came the waiting period. This is where many DIY experiments fail, because people expect instant results. They try something for a day or two, see no dramatic change, and declare the experiment a failure. But animal behavior rarely changes overnight. Rats are cautious creatures. They investigate changes in their environment slowly. They observe new objects, unfamiliar smells, and altered conditions before deciding how to respond. So, instead of expecting immediate results, I simply monitored the area over several weeks. During the first few days, there was nothing remarkable to report. The workshop looked the same as always. No dramatic transformation occurred, no miracle happened overnight. But by the end of the first week, I noticed something interesting. The signs of activity seemed less frequent. Areas where I would normally see evidence of rodent movement appeared quieter than usual. At first, I assumed it might be coincidence. Perhaps the rats had simply found another food source. Perhaps seasonal changes had influenced their behavior. But as the second week passed, the pattern continued. The area surrounding the fan cage was noticeably quieter. New signs of activity were less common. The difference was not dramatic enough to claim complete success, but it was significant enough to get my attention. Something had changed, and I wanted to understand why. The more I researched rodent behavior, the more the explanation made sense. Rats are extremely cautious animals. Their survival depends on avoiding danger. Anything unfamiliar can trigger suspicion. Strong new odors can create uncertainty, especially when those odors suddenly appear in an area where rats previously felt comfortable. While the scent itself may not physically harm them, it can make the environment feel less predictable and less secure. For an animal that depends on routine and familiarity, that uncertainty can be enough to encourage relocation. What fascinated me most was realizing that the fan cage itself was not the repellent. The cage was simply the delivery system. That distinction is important. The effectiveness came from combining airflow, scent distribution, protection for the absorbent materials, and strategic placement. The old fan cage happened to provide all those advantages naturally. Its original design allowed air to circulate freely, helping distribute the scent throughout the surrounding area. At the same time, the cage protected the materials inside from being disturbed. As I continued observing the experiment, I started thinking about a larger lesson. Most people look at broken household items and immediately focus on what they can no longer do. The fan no longer cooled a room, therefore it seemed useless. But creative recycling begins when you stop asking what something used to be and start asking what it could become. That shift in perspective opens up countless possibilities. An old fan cage can become a garden trellis. It can become a hanging storage basket. It can become a plant protector. It can become a drying rack. And in this case, it became the foundation for an unusual homemade rat deterrent. The project reminded me that innovation often comes from seeing familiar objects differently rather than constantly buying new products. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever tried a strange DIY project that sounded ridiculous but actually worked? Maybe it was a gardening hack, a workshop invention, a homemade repair, or a clever recycling idea. Let us know in the comments, because some of the best ideas come from ordinary people experimenting with materials that others throw away. One thing I learned from this project is that placement matters. Rats typically travel along walls, edges, corners, and protected pathways. Positioning deterrents in those areas increases the chances that rodents will encounter the scent frequently. Random placement may reduce effectiveness significantly. Understanding how animals move through a space is just as important as the deterrent itself. Maintenance also plays a major role. Strong scents weaken over time. Many people try natural deterrents once and assume they do not work because they forget to refresh the scent source. As the odor fades, so does the deterrent effect. Periodically replenishing the absorbent material helps maintain consistent performance and keeps the system functioning as intended. Another important lesson is that prevention almost always works better than reaction. Once rats become established, removing them can be difficult. Preventing an area from becoming attractive in the first place is often the smarter strategy. That means storing food properly, cleaning up spills quickly, reducing clutter, eliminating water sources, and using deterrents before infestations become severe. No single solution will solve every rodent problem, but several small improvements working together can create a noticeable difference. That is exactly what this experiment demonstrated. The fan cage wasn't a magical device. It was one component in a broader effort to make the environment less appealing to pests. And sometimes that's all it takes to tip the balance in your favor. Looking back, the biggest surprise was not that the experiment showed promising results. The biggest surprise was discovering value in something I was moments away from throwing away. Millions of people probably have old fan cages sitting in garages, workshops, basements, sheds, or scrap piles right now. Most of them will never think twice about them. But with a little creativity and a willingness to experiment, those forgotten items can become something useful once again. That's the real lesson behind this project. Sometimes the best DIY ideas are not hidden inside expensive tools or complicated inventions. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, disguised as junk. All it takes is a different perspective to uncover their potential. So before you throw away that old fan cage, take another look. It might become a useful workshop project. It might become a gardening tool. It might become a storage solution. Or it might help create a simple homemade rat deterrent that makes your space a little less welcoming to unwanted visitors. If you enjoyed this experiment and would like to see more creative recycling projects, homemade inventions, workshop ideas, unusual life hacks, and DIY tests that challenge conventional thinking, consider supporting Forbidden and Ember. Your support helps us continue researching, building, testing, and sharing practical ideas that turn everyday objects into something extraordinary. Thank you for spending time with us today. And remember, sometimes the most useful thing in your workshop is the thing you almost threw away.